Thank you. This is a presentation that I've been massaging, adjusting kind of over time because there seems to be a need for churches to see that somebody else has done it, that they've got pretty almost to the finish line, they've completed things, it is possible. So I'm going to give you kind of my case study story of our church. And what I prefer to do as a presenter is run the whole slides and then break for Q&A. So Mel, I know this might be a challenge for you, but write down your questions and or put them into chat, and we'll have at them afterwards. This may or may not be relevant to what you're working on in your church, but I want to just let people know here is a case study that could be used for churches that are saying, well, how do you do this? And I can't do that. That's not possible. It's very contextualized to some special circumstances in Washington State, but here we go. And I'm sharing my screen. I'm going to make it so I can't see you guys and get started. So the topic today is how one small congregation in Washington State navigated the grant funding world and ended up with solar panels, storage batteries, and an EV, that's electrical vehicle, charger without spending too much of their own money. So this is a map of Washington State. That blue dot is where we are. We're in the middle of Puget Sound, in between Seattle and Tacoma. That's a map of our island, and in our island, there is one town called Vashon, and we are on the southern edge of that town, so we're really well positioned for people that come visit, for tourists, people come to the grocery stores in this community. It's only about 11,000 people, it's mostly rural, and there's no bridge. We have a ferry off the north end and a ferry off the south end. Average worship attendant is 31. Our 2024 budget was 161,000, so we are definitely in that small church category. So why did we do all of this? Well, these should be things you're relatively familiar with. Back in 2021, their general agencies at the UMC decided to commit to net zero by 2050. And our conference, Pacific Northwest Conference, by the way, that's our bishop in the upper right-hand corner, in 2023, in its infinite wisdom, said, we're going to increase the energy efficiency of church buildings and parsonages by 50% by 2030. Oh my gosh, that was a very aggressive goal. So we figured, well, we better get going on this. So our church set up 6 going green strategies. One was put solar panels on the education building for the food bank, because the food bank is moving into our campus in a big way. But that's on hold. We haven't found the money for that yet. Solar panels and battery for the sanctuary and parsonage, which we have found money for, and what this case study is a lot about. Funded it with a grant and the IRS tax credit. We installed an electric vehicle charging station. We swapped out some appliances in our kitchen based on a conference COVID transition grant, as it was called. We installed a heat pump. We want to install a heat pump for the sanctuary because we're on gas heat right now. It is not yet installed. It's the parsonage that we've installed, not the sanctuary. That's a typo. And we work on expanding church and community understanding of our role in climate change, which is what this is about. So we've had a little news on our island about our grant that we won for solar. It was our little newspaper called the Beachcomber. There's another picture of our church. 125-year-old congregation that looks like many Methodist churches around the country. The key context in Washington State, though, is Washington State has its own money for grants, and it's called the Climate Commitment Act. It was passed several years ago. It's a carbon offset auction program that corporations that work in Washington State have to buy carbon credits, and that money goes into a fund. And that fund is used to make grants out to install solar and other energy efficient efforts throughout the state. So we're very special like this. New Jersey also, I think, has this. And so that's the unique feature that made a lot of this possible. So what did we do? So our plan was to put solar on the parsonage over here and on the education building. We're putting the batteries next to the sanctuary building itself. We had to trench, get the power over there, but this is pretty much the setup. Interesting fact is that the food bank is coming in. They're going to build a big warehouse right here where the playground is, and they're going to take over the education building. But we are holding on to the roof and be able to keep our panels on the roof. So here's a picture of our education building where the panels are. You can see the parsonage off to the right with panels. And here's a picture of 2 of our battery stacks. There are 4 Tesla power walls in here, and there's 2 power walls over in the parsonage. This was way before Doge happened, so this was the best product that's out there. Still pretty much is the best product out there, but just saying. Our system financial plan, it's a 30,000 watt system. We have 82 panels in all. We have 6 power walls. The system cost was $200,000. So the way that we funded it, because there was the system cost, but then our other costs, which the education building needed a new roof. We had to clean the parsonage roof before the panels could be installed. We needed to build a shed for the batteries. And we had interest to pay on our bridge loan because much of this money was cost reimbursement. Our $200,000 price tag was divided between about $80,000 for panels and $120,000 for batteries. So when you add storage into your system, it is expensive and more than doubles the cost, but there's some good reasons to do that I can tell later. So we used our own money for the $34,500. We won a grant for almost $140,000 from Department of Commerce, Solar Plus Storage for Resilient Communities program. And we qualified for, submitted, and actually received payment from the IRS for the elective pay eligible tax credits, sometimes known as direct pay. And that's how we finance the whole thing. Now, in terms of the money coming in after the fact, in terms of cost reimbursement from Washington Commerce or waiting for the IRS to actually make their payment on the 30%, we opened a $125,000 bridge loan, or line of credit, if you will, from the Faith Foundation Northwest, which is our Methodist savings and loan, if you will. They hold all the deposits from most of our churches and make loans out to churches for capital renovations. And so they were happy and very interested in making a bridge loan for us to cover the cost until we got it paid back. And we came in under our interest on the bridge loan over the time it took to finance all of it. So why did we do this all? Well, first of all, it makes us more sustainable. Our lower utility bills free up money for missions, or at least make our budget more affordable, which is more the case in a small church. Lowers our carbon footprint because our utility uses fossil fuels to generate power. So we're replacing that fossil fuel electricity with solar electricity. It makes a statement about our church's creation care ministry. Helps us meet growing community electric demand by pushing surplus green power out to the grid. So if you generate solar power that you don't use, it goes out to your neighbors, in effect. It creates the potential for ministry that matters. Now, ministry that matters is a favorite phrase of our bishop. And he wants us to get out of our churches and not just stand at the window and look outside, but go outside and do ministry that matters. And if you have a solar system with battery storage, then you have the opportunity to provide needed community service in a power outage. Because if you have solar with the batteries, when the grid goes down, you are a standalone electrified building. If you don't have the battery storage, when the grid goes down, you can't tap into your solar power because that electricity would go back onto the grid and possibly hurt line workers trying to fix the problems. But if you have battery, you're self-contained, and you can say, hey, we're open for lighting, cooking, battery charging, being with us. Even if it's super hot, it could be cooling if you have AC, or super cold, you've got heat. So now it's helping solidify the idea of us being a resilience hub, which is becoming more of a key element in city and regional climate action planning. Real resilience hub means we don't just say, hey, come be warm when the power goes down or charge your batteries, but come here for our community services. And if the grid goes down, those community services can stay active. So we've had this in our church for a while. The Vashon Youth and Family Services was providing counseling and access to resources. The food bank was doing some of their programs there, etc. And so we were able to kind of say, hey, maybe we already are a resilience hub. And now that we have solar plus storage, it's a thing. And in fact, there's programs and money available for resilience hubs now that we're trying to tap into. Let's look at each one of these. Makes your church save more money. I want you to see this grid in the upper right-hand corner, which is our electricity usage from the utility. And guess when our solar panel and storage system kicked in June. So we have been running with no cost to us, except for a tiny bit in March, for all of this time based on the system that we installed. So there's definitely money to be saved. Also, point number 2 was lower our carbon footprint. Now, there's a unique problem in Washington State in that a lot of the utilities get their money from the Columbia River Bonneville Power Administration. So it's already very green power. So these charts down here show which, particularly this one on the right, which of the utility providers are using, still have high emissions because they're not just using Bonneville Power water power. So our utility, this number 1, Puget Sound Energy, still uses more than half of their energy generating capacity fueled by carbon-based fuels. And so we are going to have a good carbon footprint offset, as opposed to some of our counterpart churches, like those in Seattle, can't make this claim as well because City of Seattle gets all of their power from a hydroelectric dam. Helps make a statement about our church's creation care ministry. There's a United Methodist Insight magazine somehow we got connected with and told our story, which helped a broader perspective on what we're trying to do to help other churches. This idea of pushing electricity out to the community when you generate too much is something called net metering. So if you get this agreement with your utility, when you have surplus power, your meter actually runs backwards and you bank that electricity for use at night or another time when your solar is not generating enough. It's a very cool thing. And it's part of your system install is getting that agreement in place with utility. 5, a ministry that matters, particularly about setting up resilience hubs. There's all kinds of things that a resilience hub could be. Backup power, communications, all in this crazy little poster that was done in a workshop to show what can you do to be a resilience hub. And if you've got the solar plus storage installed, when there's a grid problem, you're ready to go. Here's a more specific definition of resilience hub: a trusted community serving facility that support communities in everyday life and before, during, and after an emergency. Further explanation of what it is if you're interested in what that phrase can mean. Here's our resilience hub collaborators, ourselves, the disaster preparedness group on the island, the youth and family services that provides help, food bank, the fire department, which manages all disaster response, and the King County Trusted Partner Network in disaster response. So there's a lot going on around here about disaster preparedness. Here's a few quick notes on our EV charger. There was only one other charging station in town at the grocery store, and so we thought the demand was there. We decided we could show our greenness by putting this charger in. There's a picture in the upper hand corner of the 2 plug charger we put in from a company called ChargePoint. We decided on a 3-year lease instead of using funds to buy it because we just weren't sure how this thing was going to work out. Would people come? Did we want to keep doing it? So we're paying $2,600 a year for this lease, but that takes care of everything, the equipment and the maintenance. We have to provide the energy to it, but now that we're on solar power, we have no energy cost. We have earned $2,219 over the past 12 months. And you can see in the graph in the right-hand corner, people are finding us. You know, they're coming, and we got a little sign that you can't see in this picture that says, "Welcome to our church. We have solar power. Don't you feel good being green," et cetera, et cetera. And they find us because of electric vehicle charging providers have maps, and you end up being on this app map, and they can show, here's our 2 little chargers on this map, and that's how they find you. We paid for it by out of mission funds. Someone had made a $10,000 donation to the church that they wanted to use it for something missional. And they thought putting this charger out there would be a good deal. So we've got money to pay those lease payments. We're going to have to decide what to do at the end of year 3. Are we going to just take it out? Are we going to install one? What are we going to do? It turns out that in Washington State, new building code requires electric vehicle chargers. And when the food bank comes in and puts in their new building, they're going to have to put in 2 chargers. So maybe leasing it wasn't such a bad idea after all. Okay, thank you. That is my presentation, mostly brought to you by the Climate Commitment Act of Washington State, because without that grant, I'm not sure we would have really gotten the ball rolling on so much of this stuff. So, thank you for letting me present. I hope this was informative and useful for people.
Thanks so much, Eric. We really appreciate everything all your time and all the wonderful information.